So, welcome back, and this is the fifth week, and here we are going to talk about a different topic. Basically, here we are going to discuss about the role of leadership. The role of leadership in implementing change is very important, and then you also have change managers who act as a catalyst to ensure that the change is successfully implemented. Before that, we talked about how we link vision and mission with the change. Even there also you find the role of leadership is very important, because it is the job of leadership, basically the top leaders, to identify the vision and mission, and then it is communicated down the line to the people who are going to work for it. So, in this session we are going to talk about that how leadership is going to facilitate the change process, right. So, I am going to start with a quote, because that becomes very relevant, and you all know about Mahatma Gandhi, and I am giving a quote. Within quote, you must be the change you wish to see in others. It means, when you want to lead the change, you need to ensure that you also changing, because you become a role model for the change, right. And with this statement we are going to start our discussion about leading change, and here we are going to discuss about the role of leadership, which is very important. Okay. Now, before we discuss about the role of leadership, it is very important to understand the difference in the orientation between the managers and the leader, right. If you look at the managers and the leaders, though both have the role overlap, but there could be a lot of differences also in the role when it comes to change. Now, if you look at the role, one thing that can be said, that is, both of them decide what needs to be done, right. Second point is, they also supposed to develop the capacity of the people, what is to be done, and then ensuring that it is done. So, these are the three major roles which the leadership is going to perform in an organization, right. Now, in order to ensure that these things are done, and if you look at the management is supposed to fulfill the responsibilities, perform the job that is given to them. So, they are more concerned with order and consistency, because they are supposed to act and see that the job is performed, so that organization is able to work, right. But the leadership is more concerned with the change. It means, it is the top leadership or the top managers who decide what needs to be done, right. And they also articulate the vision and mission for the organization. So, they are going to decide where we want to go in the future, what kind of vision we should have, okay, what could be the strategies of the organization. So, basically all this comes under the ambit of top managers, and that is why the role of the top managers the leadership become very important. Though there could be overlap, but you know that Peter Drucker says that leadership is what? Getting things right or getting right things, right. So, getting right things is management, and getting things right is leadership. So, this would provide you a difference in the role of both the leaders and the manager. Why I am talking about the role of leadership and managers? Because managers are supposed to carry out the activities in the organization that is given by the leaders. So, here leaders assume more responsibilities in terms of deciding what needs to be done, and also developing the capacity of the people, and then they also need to ensure that it is done, right. So, what we are going to discuss when I am going to talk about the leading change is elaborate upon all these 3 points in a detail to ensure that how leadership is going to make a difference. So, we will take about the first point, deciding about what needs to be done. So, when we say that what is to be done, what is the role of the management? Okay. Management is also involved in deciding what is to be done. So, they have a process, they set the goals, they also define the various steps through which the job is to be done and the goals is to be achieved, and for that they identify and allocate resources. So, through which they are able to achieve the goals and objectives. So, it is a usual process of management which you call planning, organizing, right, staffing, leading and controlling. These are the various activities through which management is able to achieve the goals and objectives, right. Now, when we are talking about leadership, leadership is responsible for creating a vision and setting a direction and also developing the strategies. So, now you can see a very clear difference between the management and leadership. So, it very clearly differentiates the role of the management and role of the leadership. So, now you can see the role of leadership is more important compared to the role of management, because management is involved with day to day operations, right. So, they plan about the activities, they organize the activity, they decide who is going to do what, they allocate the resources, okay, and then make people responsible through, okay, by giving the responsibility that, okay, who is going to do what, and they also have a control mechanism, right. They allocate the resources for different activities to ensure that the job is done and they are able to achieve the goals and objectives of the organization. But who sets the goals and objectives? The goals and objectives or the strategies is set by the top managers. Okay. So, the role of leadership is different compared to the management here. So, they are basically able to create the vision, and that is what we have been discussing in the last chapter also, that leadership is responsible for creating the organization. And when they create the organization, they must be able to visualize that it is powerful, it communicates a vision down the line, so that people are able to inculcate them, okay, and follow them, and it acts as or inspires people or motivate people, and it also produces some kind of commitment to the change, right. So, the leadership and its role is very important here, because they focus on creating a vision. That is what we have been discussing in the last section also, and it is also setting a direction, and right, where we want to go and what kind of strategies we need to adopt in order to reach to that direction, right. So, the role of leadership become more important compared to this. So, the role of leadership is more strategic and the role of management here become more operational in nature. Now, you can see the role this person is going to act as a leader, it means that he is going to light the lamp, he is going to tell, okay, what is to be done, and then they are going to do it. What I am trying to tell here is that management is going to follow what the leadership is supposed to provide in terms of direction, strategic intent, goals and objectives, for which the management is going to use resources to ensure that it is done and the goals and objectives are achieved. So, both are complementary to each other. It is not that, okay, we only need leaders and do not need managers, right. So, both of them are important. Discussing further what needs to be done. Okay. Now, we have been talking about the vision, a vision which is meaningful, a vision which is having a strategic say orientation, a vision which is able to help people to motivate, inspire and commit for change, right. So, you need to ensure that when leadership is going to decide about the vision, but what kind of vision it is able to develop, and if it is not able to a vision which is having a content and context, then you can say that the quality of vision is going to fail, right. So, a strong vision is very important. A strong vision, I mean to say that it should have a content, it should be strong, or it should have a strategic orientation which provides a direction for the future, so that people are able to follow it. So, a strong vision can make a valuable contribution to the success of a change initiative, because if the vision is strong enough, then only it will be able to communicate in a very powerful way down the line to the people that, okay, this is what we need to do in order to realize the goals and objectives. Now, but unless the leader make a realistic assessment of the situation, that is the the context, and respond to the concern of others, look into the stakeholders, right. And if he is able to look into the various stakeholders, we have already talked about it, that how the vision has evolved, right. So, you need to consult stakeholders, employees, look into the context, right, economic context, cultural context, internal context, and then based on that you are supposed to develop a strong vision. So, when we talk about leading change, one of the fundamental issues that come here is that this leading change start with creating a strong vision for the organization, because that becomes the first step or a fundamental basis for going for a change, right. Now, if you look at this picture, it shows what? It shows that what people are doing and why they are doing, right. So, they could be various stakeholders in the process. So, you need to assess the situation. You also look at the concern of all the people, your stakeholders, okay, employees, stakeholders, right, including people in the society, right, and the processes to ensure that you are able to develop a vision which is going to serve the purpose of the organization. And if it does not happen, then you are not in a position to create a vision which could be considered as good and strong. Now, we will discuss some other issues related to this. What needs to be done? See, we talked about two different points here, assessment of the situation and respond to the concern of others. So, we first will see that how we go about a realistic assessment of the situation. Okay. So, the leader's assessment of the situation depends upon what? This depends upon how well they have been able to scan the environment, the context in terms of culture, technology, economic environment and other factors to realize the kind of environment in which they are going to operate, right. So, it depends upon the diagnosis. Diagnosis of what? Internal and external environment, which we have discussed in detail. If this diagnosis is good, they would be able to develop a strong vision about the future and which is going to provide them a direction. But if this diagnosis of the environment is not good, then they will not be able to develop a strong vision, which would have a strategic orientation. So, what I mean by diagnosis here is that you should be able to identify the kind of environment in which you are operating, right. Not only that, you should have enough information about the context, economic context, cultural context, social context, political context, technical context, which is going to provide you a frame for operating, right, because these kind of information would help you to create a vision for your organization, that what you can achieve given these conditions in the environment, right. So, a diagnosis, a proper diagnosis you can say of the environment is very, very important, right. So, you need to ensure that yes, you are able to get all the information. So, here information means two things. One is the amount of information that you are able to gather about the various factors, which is going to help you to create a vision, and the quality of information. So, the amount of information and the quality of information both are important, because that is going to support your position, that how well you will be in, how better position you have in order to develop a vision, right. And then you look at your past successes, because that is also going to contribute to your condition. It means, if you have been able to correctly assess your situation in the past, then you will be in better position to identify the kind of future that you envision for yourself, right. But if you have not been able to get success in the past, then it will become very difficult that identify the kind of situation that you are going to work in the future, right. So, it is very, very important to ensure that it happens, right. And then you are in a position to ensure that the vision that you develop based on your correct diagnosis is something that is really meaningful and has a context, right. Because if the vision is not meaningful, people are not able to relate themselves with the vision, they are not able to imagine the future, the kind of future that they need to go for, then it becomes very, very challenging, right. Then the vision is not going to be helpful, right. So, if the vision is not good, then people or the stakeholders may not be able to relate themselves, they will not be able to commit themselves to the change, right. And then people down the line have lot of repercussions, fear that whether this vision is good or not, whether it is possible to realize or not. So, they have some kind of fear in it, that the kind of vision that is developed by the top leadership is not good, and it does not provide something that could be called worthwhile and meaningful in, right. So, if the vision is not meaningful because the content and context has not been identified properly, then this would create a lot of repercussions among the employees, and that this would create a lot of fear, anxiety and stress whether this vision is good, whether it is possible to realize it or not, right. And then they all depend upon the trust and the judgment that the leadership made, because the role of the leadership is to create the vision and mission statement for the organization. So, we need to see that the vision that is created is not challenged, but it is acceptable to everyone. So, this shows what? Yes, whatever you have developed, we are going to accept it, but here you see that whether you are able to properly diagnose it or not, and whether you have all the information with it, okay, and make sure that it is not going to be challenging, right, and then people are ready to accept it. So, if these things are not there, then probably you are not able to correctly assess the context in which you are going to operate, and then it would be very difficult for you to envision a future in terms of your vision, which could be considered as meaningful. Now, second thing is looking at the stakeholders' interest, that is equally important, right, because when you are going to develop a vision for the organization, you are not only looking at the context in which it is operating, but whether this vision is going to be imbibed by the stakeholders or not, and whether you get some feedback from the stakeholders or not. You remember when I was talking about how vision evolves in the future, you need to consult your stakeholders, the other employees in the process, to ensure that it is able to satisfy the needs of your key stakeholders, right. So, if you are not able to satisfy the needs of your stakeholders, then you will have certain disadvantage, because some of the stakeholders might think that this vision is not for them, and they would not actually agree to this kind of vision, and they would always undermine any attempt which you want to introduce, because the kind of vision that you have developed, right. So, it may not be acceptable to some of the stakeholders, even employees may not accept it, or stakeholders who have invested money they would not accept it, because it is not going to satisfy their interests and needs. So, when you are going to develop a vision, on the one side you need to ensure that you are going to create a vision which is meaningful, okay, and it has a context with proper diagnosis, but at the same time you also need to ensure that it is able to satisfy the needs and interest of various stakeholders who are affiliated with that particular organization. Moving further, we are going to discuss the next point, that is developing the capacity to it. How we are going to develop the capacity of the leaders to create a vision, right. So, here the role of the management is important, because it is the managers who are going to develop the capacity of the people, so that they are going to work on the agenda of the organization, right. So, it is related to leadership, or it could also be related to the manager. So, once the leadership is decided that okay, this is what we need to achieve, then the management has to suggest the kind of competencies that would be required by the people to achieve these goals and objectives or the strategic intent. So, that we are able to realize envision your future problem. Okay. So, if you are not able to realize your future in a proper context, then what will happen? It means that your people are not competent enough to go for it. So, the second most important point that is discussed here is that you need to ensure that your managers are going to work to ensure that they have the capacity, and their capacity is aligned with the goals and objectives of the organization, right. So, they need to develop the capacity to ensure that the people who are going to work for this organization are helping to achieve the organization to achieve its goals and objectives. How it is possible? By organizing, by staffing, by controlling. Okay. So, these are related to the managerial activities. And then another important activity is aligning people to achieve the vision. So, you need to ensure that once it is communicated and people are able to develop their capacities, so that the capacity of the people is aligned with the goals and objectives in such a way, so that they help in achieving the goals and objectives. For example, you can see here the managers have been able to align the activities of the people that they are able to realize their goals. So, if and the goal here is to win the race. So, unless all the people who are working, they need to coordinate their activities based on their competence, so that this person is able to lead as a manager and achieve the goals and objectives of the organization. If the activities are not coordinated and aligned with each other based on the competence which they have. So, the competence is first thing that they need to win the race, and the second is alignment of their activities with the goals and objectives, right. So, the objective here is to win the race, and coordination is that how they are going to coordinate their activities based on the competence, so that they are able to achieve the goals and objectives. So, it is very, very important, right. So, management, the role is developing capacity, the role of leadership is how alignment happens, right. So, creating direction, identifying them, and see that how it is possible to achieve the goals and objectives of the organization. Moving further, how we are going to build the capacity, that is very, very important. Now, you see here, this shows a team, that how the team is going to align their activities or build their coalitions with each other by coordination and integration of their activities based on the competence that people have, so that they are able to achieve the goals and objectives, right. So, you need to ensure that people are able to develop their capacities and build coalition which is going to be committed to achieve the goal. Now, if you look at the last example that I had given here, see here you have been able to build a coalition and commitment by aligning their activities in such a way, so that they are able to achieve the goals and objectives. Now, how this is to be achieved, right? Then you need to ensure that you are able to develop the capacity. So, you go for some kind of interventions to ensure that people are able to develop those capacities which is required, right. And how it is happening? Through interdependence, right. Most of the jobs are interdependent. Even I go back to the same example again. For example, see all the people who are rowing, they need to coordinate their activities, okay. So, and their jobs are interdependent. So, if they are going to align their activities with each other, coordinate with each other, only then they are going to be successful, otherwise not. So, this interdependence is very, very important here, and that is why we are talking about interdependence, okay. So, the jobs are interdependent, the activities are interdependent, and that is where you need to go for better integration and coordination of activities among the members of the organization, so that you are able to achieve it, okay. So, whether you are using technology or whatever the systems or hierarchy, you need to ensure that this interdependence is achieved at a level that is desirable, right. And this requires a lateral leadership. It means that everybody become a leader at one point of time, right. For example, when we are talking about interdependence, it could be different kind of interdependence, okay. So, here we are basically talking about either pooled interdependence, where everybody is pooling their resources, knowledge and skill to coordinate the activities, or reciprocal attendance, right, where one after each other they are going to coordinate the activities and integrate into such a way, so that they are able to understand what needs to be done and they are able to achieve the goals and objectives, right. So, it is very, very important to build coalitions basically in terms of interdependence, right, either pooled or reciprocal. Moving further, how they go about it, another important. So, empowering people, right. Empowering means that yes, you need to delegate people authority down the line, so that they are going to act on it. It means that you need to go for decentralized decision making, right. So, if there is a clear and shared sense of direction, then you need to ensure that your subordinates are empowered, they are going to take action which is required by them, right, and this is going to help you to ensure that they are able to take up those actions which is required, and that is where this empowerment is very, very important. Because if you are not empowering, then there could be positions where there could be conflict, right, or where supervisors are going to wrest all the powers, then it would create a lot of problems, right. So, you need to ensure this shared sense of direction by empowering people down the line, so that everybody is working for the same goal and objective, right. But if his empowerment is not happening, then this does not create a shared sense of direction, and then it means this shows that vision has not been communicated properly to everyone. Okay. Now, moving further, we will talk about how it is done, the third point. So, here see that how you are able to coordinate and integrate your activities together, so that you are able to achieve your goals and objectives. This figure, that is what it shows. Now, how it could be done? So, Kotter identifies certain ways like articulating the vision in ways that are accord with people's values. So, it must meet the values and goals of the people. So, it must be aligned with that one. Okay. Let people decide how to achieve the vision, thereby giving them some sense of control, and this is related with what we call empowering them, delegating power down the line. So, we go for decentralized decision making process, and then supporting others' effort, that is where you go for coordination and integration of activities through coaching, feedback and role modeling. And finally, recognizing and rewarding success. So, once the goals are achieved, you need to reward and recognize the efforts made by the people in achieving the goals and objectives. Okay. And that is how we are able to ensure that the goals and objectives of the organization is achieved. Now, moving further, if you are talking about leadership, change leadership, what actually happens? Now, I am going to show you a graph which relate with that how it happens through a process. Okay. So, how the vision gets evolved and how people start accepting along a time frame, okay, and what happens to them. So, we have on this dimension we have self esteem, which is related to the individual, and this dimension we have time. So, the time frame here. Now, you can see that you go through different time frames, right, starting with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So, there could be other time frame that I have not discussed here, but I have just included these time frame. So, you look at this, there are 7 time frames. Okay. So, we start with the first 4, which is immobilization. So, the moment you decide about it, right, the self esteem slightly goes up, then the another state come out where the self esteem goes down with the time, and that is where the role of leadership is very, very important to ensure that you are able to come out it, and then again the acceptance or letting it go happens, right. You say okay, let us go for change, and that is where you will find the role of leadership at all these stages are very, very important, especially the change leaders. And then you move further, look at this 5, you test it, and then you try to see whether it is good for it you or not. If you find good, then it could relate to the self esteem, and finally you internalize the change. It means the change is going to be successful, and that is where at each of these stages, these 3 stages and the earlier 4 stages, it is very, very important to keep track the people. And how it is possible? By empowering them, delegating authority, right, aligning their values and goals with the organization, right, and developing their capacities. And if all this happens, then the leadership would be in a better position to ensure that they are able to internalize their goals and objectives, and that is where they identify some kind of meaning, or they are able to make sense of what is happening, and ultimately they are able to internalize and they go for it, right. Moving further, so these are the 4 factors which are basically important in leading change. We have discussed all of them one by one. So, the first one is follower. What about followers? Okay. So, you look at what kind of leadership style is required by the follower. Here communication, it must be 2-way, situation, the context is very, very important, and the leader, the top leadership, right. So, based on this, there is an interaction among all these factors, the leaders need to communicate, and then followers are going to act depending upon the situation, right. So, these 4 factors are very, very important when it comes to leading change. And finally, what you are going to do is that see that how what leaders do basically in the process. They need to recognize the need for change. This is the responsibility of the top managers, not the managers. They need to identify the goal related to the change. They need to communicate a sense of direction. So, all these points we have already talked about, just to summarize them, I am talking about it here. Then they need to develop a change strategy, they need to involve people in the process, build coalitions, motivate people, so that they are committed to the change, provide all the support in terms of resources and other things, and then they also need to create a context which is conducive to the change. So, they need to create an environment and climate which facilitate the change. So, it is very, very important to understand the role of leadership in leading change. How do they go about it? They follow different type of leadership, situational leadership, charismatic leadership or distributed leadership. So, if they follow this kind of leadership style, what happens? It means the leadership style depends upon the kind of situation that is there, right. So, it all depends upon the situation, and then accordingly you follow a leadership style. Charismatic leaders, those who are really ready to aspire, they have the ability to aspire, like Gandhiji, right. So, this requires framing, that you are able to develop a frame for yourself, and then you have rhetorical crafting. It means that you are able to communicate and speak in such a voice, so that people get influenced by you. And then distributed leadership. Distributed leadership is nothing else, where everybody comes to play the role of a leader at different levels. Okay. So, the leadership get distributed down the line. So, if this happens, then everybody accept the role of a leader and then understand the responsibility that what they need to do, right. And this creates a shared vision for everyone, because the leadership gets distributed down the line, and this is possible only when you go for decentralized decision making process. Okay. And then if we go for leadership, they need to work collectively, right. So, now if you look at all the leaders here, you will find that yes, they are looking at different direction, but they are united, so that they are able to cope up with any kind of challenge that is happening, right. So, irrespective of the context or the situation, it is very, very important that leaders come together, all the top managers together, and so that they become a very powerful stakeholders. And it would be possible only if they are coherent and fragile. Fragile means how they are connected with each other. So, this is what is going to decide feasibility. So, this could be three kind of coupling that we are going to talk about here is strategic, organizational and environmental. So, very briefly I will talk about these three kind of coupling. You can see here, coupling, strategic coupling means that yes, leaders are connected with each other. See the kind of network that they have developed here. Organizational coupling, leaders are connected with each other and the various stakeholders, the constituencies of organizations are also connected with each other. And third one is environmental coupling. It means the leadership vision and aspirations are aligned with the goals and objectives of the external stakeholders here. So, these are the three different kind of coupling that happens. Now, if we relate all these together, then what will happen? You get the best harmony, but whether it is possible or not, that is very difficult to say. But now, see what happens here, we try to collate all the three type of coupling, that is strategic, organizational and environmental, right. So, this would be able to accommodate the interest of all the stakeholders, right, and the skills of the member leadership would be able to decide the extent to which the kind of harmony you are going to achieve at all the levels, all the three levels. But so, it is difficult, but if you are able to achieve it, then it is good for the organization. Thank you very much.